A 10-year-old girl saved a billionaire from dying on his sickbed. Before we continue, please remember to like, share and subscribe. The hospital room was cloaked in a somber silence, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of machines that monitored every fragile breath the billionaire took. Lucas Bennett, once a titan of industry and power, now lay pale and motionless on the crisp white sheets, his chest rising and falling with difficulty. Tubes and wires connected him to a maze of medical devices, each one a lifeline tethering him to the world he had built with his own hands. The air was thick with tension, an invisible weight pressing down on everyone present. Nurses moved with quiet efficiency, their faces drawn tight with worry as they adjusted monitors and checked vitals. Doctors huddled near the doorway, exchanging hushed, urgent words, their brows furrowed with concern. It was clear that Lucas's condition had worsened in the past hours, and time seemed to be slipping away faster than anyone dared admit. Outside the sterile walls of the hospital, life went on obliviously, but inside this small room, the battle between life and death played out in painstaking detail. The hum of machines was both a comfort and a reminder. Without them, Lucas would not survive. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast long shadows across the room, highlighting the frailty of a man who had once commanded boardrooms and global markets. Despite the gravity of the situation, hope flickered faintly in the eyes of the medical team. They worked tirelessly, fueled by the possibility of a miracle, yet haunted by the harsh reality they faced. Friends and family had gathered quietly outside, their whispers filled with prayers and fears, unable to enter this sacred space where fate hung in delicate balance. As the minutes stretched into hours, the scene unfolded like a fragile breath held too long, each monitor beep a heartbeat of hope, each pause a silent plea. The billionaire's world had been reduced to this one room, this one moment, where survival was uncertain and every second counted. In this stillness, a quiet drama played out, unseen by the bustling world beyond. It was here, amid the sterile white walls and humming machines, that the story of survival would either reach its turning point or slip away into the shadows. The weight of the moment settled over everyone present, a reminder that even the most powerful among us can be brought low, and that sometimes, the fight to live is the greatest battle of all. Lily stepped cautiously through the hospital's automatic doors, clutching her mother's hand. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the soft murmur of distant voices and the occasional beep of medical machines. For Lily, this was just another visit, one of many, to see her grandmother, who was recovering in a nearby ward. But as she wandered the quiet hallways with wide, curious eyes, something else caught her attention. In the room next door to her grandmother's, a man lay motionless on a bed, his skin pale and translucent under the harsh hospital lights. He was hooked to machines, wires trailing from his body like fragile lifelines. Lily didn't know who he was, but she could tell, without understanding exactly why, that he was very sick. His face was thin and drawn, a stark contrast to the smiling faces she usually saw on television or in storybooks. While the adults busied themselves with whispered conversations and routine checks, Lily's young mind absorbed everything. She noticed how the nurses moved hurriedly, their faces tight with concern, and how the doctors spoke in hushed tones behind closed doors. It was a world of grown-up worries, but Lily felt it deeply, as if she could see the invisible threads of tension that connected them all. As she peered through the slightly open door, her eyes met the billionaire's frail figure. There was something about him that made her pause, not just because he looked so fragile, but because beneath that vulnerability, she sensed a story waiting to be told. Maybe it was the way he struggled to breathe, or the faint tremor of his hand resting on the bed. Whatever it was, Lily's heart tugged at her to pay closer attention. Her mother called her name softly, reminding her it was time to leave, but Lily hesitated. She wanted to understand more, to see beyond the beeping machines and the hurried footsteps. Her innocent curiosity transformed into quiet empathy. Unlike the adults who seemed overwhelmed or resigned, Lily's young eyes searched for hope, for signs that things could get better. In that moment, the hospital wasn't just a place of sickness and despair, it was a space where something unexpected could happen. Lily didn't know it yet, but her presence, her attention, would become a catalyst for change. While others saw only a dying man and a losing battle, Lily's heart saw a flicker of life that deserved a chance. As she pulled her mother gently away, Lily glanced back once more, a silent promise forming within her, she would not look away. Something inside told her that this frail man's story was far from over, and that she might have a part to play in the days to come. With that thought, Lily stepped forward, unknowingly on the path to an extraordinary act of courage and compassion. Lily couldn't stop thinking about the man in the hospital bed. Even as she sat beside her grandmother's bedside, listening politely as her mother chatted, her mind kept drifting back to the quiet room next door. There was something in the way he had lain there, too still, too silent, that didn't sit right with her. The nurses had come and gone with their machines and charts, yet something about him felt off. After her grandmother had dozed off, Lily quietly slipped into the hallway. She lingered outside the billionaire's room, pretending to tie her shoelace as she peeked through the small gap in the door. He looked the same, pale, unmoving, but her sharp young eyes noticed a detail no one else had mentioned. His chest rose and fell unevenly. Not just slowly, but with small, irregular pauses that didn't seem natural. And then there was something else, a faint red rash creeping up his neck. It hadn't been there the day before. A nurse came by, catching her staring. "Sweetie, you shouldn't be in here," she said with a warm smile, guiding her away. "But I think something's wrong," Lily insisted, pointing toward the man in the bed. "He's breathing weird. And his neck's all red." The nurse chuckled gently. "The doctors are watching him carefully. Everything's under control." But Lily didn't think so. "No, I mean, he didn't look like that yesterday." "I remember." The nurse paused, uncertain, and offered a kind nod. "That's very observant of you. Why don't you go sit with your mom?" Dismissed, Lily walked back reluctantly. But her mind raced. Why hadn't anyone noticed? Didn't they look at his face? Watch how he breathed. She was just a kid, but even she could tell something had changed. Later that afternoon, Lily returned to the hallway with a notebook in her hand. She pretended to draw, but she was really watching. Each time a nurse entered, she noted how long they stayed. She counted the seconds between the billionaire's breaths. And as the rash grew darker and crept toward his collarbone, her concern deepened. She approached a different nurse, one she hadn't spoken to yet. This time, she was firmer. "Please check him again. His breathing isn't steady, and that rash wasn't there before. I think something's wrong." The nurse, caught off guard by the girl's intensity, hesitated, then decided to take another look. She walked into the room, observed for a moment, then called for another doctor. Minutes later, the quiet hallway burst into motion. Voices sharpened. A crash cart appeared. Orders were barked. Lily watched from the side, heart pounding, not with fear, but with purpose. In the middle of all the chaos, no one noticed the 10-year-old standing so still, watching with wide but certain eyes. She hadn't shouted or panicked. She had just paid attention, and refused to be ignored. What others had missed, she had seen. Because sometimes, it takes a child to notice what adults have stopped looking for. Lily stood in the hallway, clutching her small notebook like a shield. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but urgency. She had seen the billionaire's uneven breathing, the strange red rash climbing his neck. She was sure something was wrong. But no one was listening. Most kids would have given up after being brushed off, but not Lily. She paced, her eyes darting from room to room, looking for the right nurse, the one who wouldn't wave her off with a patronizing smile. Finally, she spotted Nurse Carla, who had once brought her an extra pudding cup during a visit. Something about her calm, kind eyes made Lily step forward. "Nurse Carla?" Lily said, her voice small but steady. "I really think you need to check on the man in room 206. He's not breathing right, and his neck looks different than before." Carla paused, mid-step, and turned to look at Lily. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily opened her notebook. "I watched him yesterday and today. He's breathing unevenly, like he forgets to breathe sometimes. And there's this red rash. It's getting worse. I'm not trying to be nosy. I don't think the machines are catching it. Carla studied her, then looked toward the room. Something in Lily's seriousness struck a chord. All right, she said. Let's go have a look together. Inside the dim room, the billionaire still lay motionless, the faint beeping of monitors filling the silence. Carla checked the chart, then bent closer. Her brow furrowed. She hadn't noticed the rash earlier, it had indeed spread. And the pattern of his breathing wasn't what she'd seen during morning rounds. She pressed the call button and paged the attending physician. Lily stood silently in the corner, watching as more staff began to filter in, their postures shifting from casual to alert. The mood in the room transformed. One doctor reviewed the notes. Another shone a light in the billionaire's eyes. Then came the orders, quick, sharp, deliberate. Possible allergic reaction, call pharmacy now. Check vitals again. Manually. Page Dr. Hill for emergency consult. Lily was ushered gently outside, but not before Carla gave her a small, knowing nod. Good eyes, Lily. From the hallway, Lily watched as the room filled with energy. What had been a space of quiet despair now buzzed with urgency. For the first time since she arrived, people were really looking, not just at charts or machines, but at the man himself. The billionaire's condition had changed. But it was Lily's persistence that had changed everything. She didn't need applause or praise. Watching the doctor's work, she felt a quiet satisfaction settle in her chest. She hadn't been wrong. And now, maybe, just maybe, there was still time to save him. All because a 10-year-old girl paid attention when no one else did. The mood inside the hospital room had shifted from stillness to urgency. Alarms weren't blaring, but there was a crackling tension in the air, like electricity just before a storm. Doctors and nurses moved swiftly but with precision, no longer relying on the machines to guide them but trusting their own eyes, and the observations of a 10-year-old girl. The attending physician, Dr. Hill, hovered over the billionaire's bedside, rechecking the latest vitals and comparing them with older reports. His oxygen saturation is lower than we thought. The machine masked the irregularity, he said, eyes narrowing. She was right. There's a drop in rhythm, delayed recovery. He gestured to the nurse. Order a full panel, check for allergic reaction or underlying infection. I want a CT scan and an immediate switch to a non-opioid sedative. Another nurse documented every change, while the pharmacist rushed in with adjusted medication. In the corner, a specialist prepared to intubate if necessary. The scene was tightly choreographed, the team acting in near-perfect synchronization, but it was clear to everyone, this wasn't a standard response. They were rewriting the treatment based on an unexpected warning. The billionaire's condition had seemed stable, until it wasn't. And the original diagnosis, it now appeared, had overlooked a secondary reaction, something hidden in plain sight, a rare response to a drug in his fore. Without Lily's keen observation of the rash and erratic breathing, it could have easily gone unnoticed until it was too late. His pupils are equal but sluggish, a doctor reported. Starting the new medication now, said another nurse. Outside, Lily sat beside her mother, watching through the glass as the team worked. She didn't know the terms or the procedures, but she could feel it, things were happening. Serious, important things. Inside, a new fore was inserted, and the rash that had begun spreading ominously seemed to stop deepening. A cooling blanket was placed across the billionaire's chest. A respiratory specialist adjusted his breathing support, gently nudging his lungs back into a regular rhythm. Over the next hour, the readings slowly began to stabilize. The erratic breaths smoothed out. The flush in his face softened. The twitch in his hands subsided. Doctors didn't celebrate or shout. They exchanged silent glances, nods that meant, we're turning the tide. Dr. Hill finally stepped out and spotted Lily in the waiting area. He knelt beside her, his tone sincere. You might have saved his life, he said quietly. We were missing something. But you didn't. Lily blinked, surprised. I just noticed. And that made all the difference. Back in the room, the billionaire remained unconscious, but his body no longer looked like it was surrendering. He looked like someone fighting back. His recovery had not been guaranteed, but the shift was undeniable. All because a child had cared enough to speak up. Because sometimes, it's not just the medicine, but who's watching, that saves a life. Morning light streamed softly through the hospital window, casting a warm glow on the pale figure lying motionless in the bed. The beeping machines had once pulsed with urgency, but now their rhythm was steady, gentler. The billionaire, once caught in the silent grip of a failing body, had begun to stir. His cheeks, once ghostly, were now tinged with the faintest blush of returning color. His chest rose and fell in a smoother pattern, no longer gasping or hesitating. The worst had passed, and in its wake came something none of them had dared say aloud for days: hope. Nurses moved through the room with lighter steps, glancing at the monitors with nods instead of furrowed brows. Dr. Hill reviewed the updated charts, his finger tapping lightly on the rising oxygen levels. He's stabilizing, he said quietly to his team. Better than expected. Even the billionaire's family, stoic and distant before, began to soften. His younger sister sat by the bed for the first time in days, her hand gently resting on his. She whispered something only he could hear, her voice full of emotion that had been locked away for far too long. Outside the room, hospital staff whispered stories about the girl who had seen what no one else had. Nurses, doctors, even janitors shared glances when Lily passed by with her mother. She had become a quiet legend in those sterile halls, not because she had done something dramatic, but because she had cared enough to notice. Lily herself didn't think she had done anything heroic. Sitting with her coloring book in the waiting lounge, she peeked up whenever a nurse walked past, just in case someone needed her again. But deep down, she knew something special had happened. She had trusted what she saw, even when no one else did. Later that afternoon, Dr. Hill found her in the hallway and handed her a small hospital pin shaped like a heart. For bravery, he said. And for reminding us that the smallest voices can carry the greatest truth. Lily beamed but said nothing. She just clutched the pin close and looked toward room 206, where the billionaire rested. Inside, the man who once seemed too far gone opened his eyes for the first time in days. Blinking against the light, he saw the familiar shape of his sister, the gentle sway of 4 bags, and the faint shadow of people moving with purpose and care. He didn't yet know the full story. He didn't know about the rash, the breathing, or the girl with the notebook. But he would. For now, he just breathed. Deeply, fully, into a new day that almost never came. All because someone had noticed, spoken up, and refused to be ignored. Recovery had begun, and it carried with it not just the promise of life, but the reminder that healing often starts with being seen. The soft knock at the hospital door barely stirred the silence. The billionaire, now sitting upright in bed with a blanket over his lap, glanced up as Dr. Hill entered, followed by a little girl holding her mother's hand. That's her, the doctor said with a quiet smile. Lily stepped forward, her shoes squeaking slightly against the polished floor. She looked smaller than he imagined, just a child in a simple dress, clutching a pin shaped like a heart on her chest. Yet the man who once commanded boardrooms and brokered billion-dollar deals felt oddly nervous in her presence. So, he said, voice still hoarse but steady, you're the one who saw what no one else did. Lily nodded shyly. Your face was red, and your breathing was strange. I just thought, maybe someone should know. The billionaire's eyes softened. And because you did, I'm still here. He extended his hand toward her, not like a powerful man rewarding a subordinate, but like a person grateful for being seen, really seen. She took his hand, small fingers curling around his palm. He glanced at her mother, who offered a teary smile, and then back at Lily. You didn't just notice. You spoke up. That takes courage. Lily shrugged. I just didn't want anything bad to happen. The billionaire leaned back, his expression contemplative. I've spent my whole life building companies, inventing systems, solving impossible problems. But I never imagined my life would be saved by someone still in elementary school. Dr. Hill chuckled from the corner. Sometimes the best minds don't come with degrees. Lily smiled, a little more confident now. I want to be a doctor one day. You'd make a great one, the billionaire said sincerely. You already think like one. And more importantly, you care. A nurse entered quietly, reminding them the patient needed rest soon. Lily gave one last wave before heading to the door, her mother beside her. As the door clicked shut, the billionaire stared at the space she'd left behind, deep in thought. He turned to Dr. Hill. You think most people would have noticed? The doctor shook his head. Most adults wouldn't have looked. Not closely enough. The billionaire let out a breath. She saw what we didn't. She felt something was wrong and acted. That kind of attention, that kind of heart, it's rare. The final moments of the story unfold with quiet reflection, shots of Lily returning to her normal life, coloring with her friends, walking to school. And in contrast, the billionaire beginning his recovery, now smiling more often, speaking kindly to hospital staff, his phone untouched on the table beside him. The video ends not on a dramatic note, but a gentle reminder: heroes can come in the smallest forms. Compassion, curiosity, and courage don't wait for age or title, they live wherever someone is brave enough to care. And because one little girl did, a life was saved, and a heart changed. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.